Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be my September wrap-up. I will be reviewing all of the books that I finished during the month of September, which is 15, which is absolutely insane. I've been a reading machine. To be fair, some of these are on the shorter side, but still. And then there are some that I DNF, so I did not finish them, will not finish them, mostly because I did not care for them. And then I'm also going to mention the ones I'm currently reading, so we can see what's going on so far. And yeah, this is going to be extra long, so get ready. I'm also going to need some caffeine because, oof. So we're going to go in order, that way I will not forget anything. Begin the month with my Read It or Unhaul It challenge, which is like everyone's favorite, myself included, although it can be torturous. And I read Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. This is like a classic. I feel like this is something that was on my list of like, I want to read it one day, picked it up during a used bookstore haul and was just okay. I found it a little underwhelming. I expected a little bit more. I feel like I've read a lot of vampire novels at this point, and if you're not going to make them super interesting, at least make them sparkly. Unfortunately, they were not sparkly. I found the storyline just okay. I wasn't emotionally invested, and mostly I didn't really care for the writing. I'm not super picky with the writing, but I found it pretty tedious. And mostly it contains a trope I don't really care for, and it is a child being turned into a vampire. It happens really early on. It's not a spoiler. So I feel like that never plays really well. Some of you did mention in the comment section that she wrote her in because she had just lost her daughter. I understand, but like it doesn't change the fact that I don't care for the premise. And yeah, I thought it was okay. It was okay. I just don't think this stood out to me, and I will forget I've read this. I feel like if this wasn't so well known, I would just never really talk about it again. I did watch the TV show, the first 2 episodes so far, and I think I will enjoy that more than the book. Maybe a generous 3. It was okay. The first book I did not finish this month was part of this giant book, which is Different Season by Stephen King. The second story, the first one is Shawshank Redemption. Fantastic. I had already read this, and then I started the second story, which is At Pupil, and I had to put down the book because Stephen King and we have a weird, complex relationship, really. First off, his endings. They usually suck. We're just going to say it. But sometimes he's really great at certain parts of his stories, and then sometimes I just feel like he goes too much into like horror for shocking value, and I just don't care. In this case, you have this young All-American boy who decides to mentally torture his neighbor because he finds out that he's a Yahtzee. So like, okay, fair enough. But then you see the consequences of that on himself too, and then the old man too. And I was still on board until they started torturing animals, and like not just once or twice. The third scene was approaching, and I decided, you know what, I've had enough. Like a cat, a bird, and the old man was going to adopt a dog, and I was like, I think for my own mental health, we're just gonna stop here. And like the story wasn't that great for me, so it wasn't compensating enough to continue. So yeah, I just really don't care. I have heard by some of you that the third story, The Body, is better. But you've also said the movie is worth it. So I might just watch the movie and get rid of this because I love the first story, Shawshank Redemption, but like, I just, no, I did not finish this and I won't finish it. So you will notice a pattern this month that whenever I was not having a good time with a fiction book, I would pick up nonfiction. Like they were so bad that they made me want to go back to nonfiction, which is great for me, but kind of tells you a lot. The first one I did finish was this one. This is Witches, Midwives, and Nurses, A History of Women Healers. This is a very short book that was written, I think it was in the 70s originally, and then the author did add an introduction in this newer edition to kind of correct and adjust a few things in the book. But it's an overview of part of history of women being kicked out of the whole like midwifery because men wanted the power of being doctors and they did not like women being midwives and taking this big part of power and money, really. And I think this is a fascinating portion of history. Enraging. Absolutely enraging. Imagine all the knowledge that was lost. And like even recently, like Canada, US, it's only recently that midwives were finally not illegal, which is crazy. They do mention that it's a little bit different in Europe, but yes, if you are into this topic, I would highly recommend this. Again, really quick read. It's like 100 pages. And you can see I've put like a million post-its in this tiny book, and I will be looking to read more on the topic. I feel like I've read some adjacent kind of storylines, but this is something that I want to read more on. So would recommend this. I'm going to give it 4 or 5. It was great. One book I did mention that I did read this month was How to Solve Your Own Murder. This is a new release. I did go through it as an audiobook, which I think was 100% the right choice for me. I feel like audiobook can be like hit and miss, can make a book or break it, but in this case, it was perfect. I would call this a cozy murder mystery. As soon as it's like in the English countryside, I feel like it becomes cozy. And I would say that even though it's a murder investigation, I thought the tone was fairly light. So again, cozy. So you have this woman who was foretold when she was younger that she would be betrayed. There's like a long list of predictions, including that, again, she would be murdered. So she spends her whole life, like 60 plus years, waiting for this to happen, kind of digging dirt on everyone around her. So you can, imagine how well loved she was. And whenever it does finally happen, she leaves her fortune to a younger relative who has a mission. She has 7 days to figure out who did it if she wants to get the money. So you're following the story through her eyes, trying to get the background story on everyone because she isn't living in the same town. So she gets there, doesn't know everyone. She gets all the secrets. And it was fun. I decided to run it up to a 4-star and then notice that this is going to be a series. It's going to be a second book. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, but I will be also listening to that one for sure. So would recommend it if you're looking for something fun. Murder for the fall. But yeah, it was good. Another horror book that I did read was this one. This was our Patreon book club pick for the month of September, and it is What Moves the Dead. It is a retelling of a Edgar Allan Poe story, The Fall of the House of Usher, which I did not read, and I will not read. But I did enjoy this because I would call this a light horror because there's a little bit of humor. Like, the author takes a few opportunities to make fun of the setting, the fact that, like, oh, every woman would be called hysterical, Nowadays, it's anxious, but you have the main character who is a soldier, and they go and visit their friend because they receive a letter letting them know that the friend's sister is dying, and their friend with both of them. So they go there to visit them, and then, things are weird. Is the house poisoning them? What's going on? The friend is definitely looking like she's dying, waking up at night, walking in the middle of the night. Things are weird and creepy, but it's still not super creepy and horror because, again, the tone is fairly light. I also like the woman, the mushroom lady, who's really cool. And yeah, it was a quick read. Once again, there is a second book that I will be reading because, wink, wink, I may have found it when I was used book shopping. You'll see that in my next book haul. So I will be reading more. I've read a couple books by the author, and she tends to be very readable, and I'm looking forward to reading more by her. So this was good. I will also give this a 4-star. The next audiobook I did finish was The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. That was a long one. So this is the second secret project by Brandon Sanderson, and a little similarly to number 1, which is Trust of the Emerald Sea. I feel like I really want to be invested in the story. I enjoy the humor. I enjoy, how fun it's supposed to be, but I'm not emotionally invested. So I did struggle a bit with it, but because it was an audiobook, it was much easier for me to finish it than an ebook. But you have an interesting premise. You have a main character who is sent back medieval England, and they don't remember who they are, why they're there. And they figure out because there's like a handbook that was half-burned, kind of exploded through a situation. And they have tidbits of information, so they figure out that this is like an alternate universe, but they don't really know what's going on. And is there magic? Is there not? Like, how are they going to survive through all of this, figure things out? There's like a mystery portion too. So I really wanted to love it, but I just could not be invested. So I might give it, I'm going to round it up to a 3-star. So it wasn't a bad book. There's something about the tone of certain books like Princess Bride, Trust of the Emerald Sea, and now this one with a ridiculously long title that I just can't, I don't know, I just don't get it 100%. But the humor was fine. The premise is fine, but when I read it, I just don't feel anything. So it was okay. Then I went through one of my new favorite challenges. I attempted the Rory Gilmore reading challenge, which if you have not seen this, I would highly recommend you do that because I went through the whole list of the books that she has read throughout the shows. So I started the video by reviewing all of the ones that I have read part of the 7th season plus the year in life, and letting you know which ones I liked, which ones I didn't. I was trying to figure out if my taste was similar to Rory Gilmore. And then I went through my bookshelves and picked out all of the ones that I know I own, but I have not read. And then I tried to read a couple throughout the week. I think I'm going to have to do that again next year because it was fun. And I ended up enjoying the books I picked out. So might as well. And there are 400 and I've only read, how many was that? 45 or something. So I still have a long list. So the first one that I did read was this one. This is The Awakening by Kit Chopin, which this was very advanced for the time, very progressive, very feminist, very controversial. You have this woman who is married and she's not really in love with that life, really. She doesn't really care for her husband. She's not that emotionally invested into her children, and she decides to find herself, which means extramarital affairs. romantic affairs. And you're following her through all of it, the controversy, obviously the expectations of society at the time, and then things happen. Obviously, it's very short, so I don't want to tell you too much. It's like 115 pages, but I found it fairly readable considering that it is a classic. I mean, most of the books on Rory Gilmore's list are classics, but this was great. I would highly recommend it. I gave it 4 star. This was good. The next book I picked from the list was Metamorphosis, which I feel like I have been wanting to try some Kafka. I feel like you hear about it, but I didn't know if it was going to be for me or not, and I really enjoyed it. The premise is a little out there. You have a main character who wakes up one day in the body of a giant insect, and you follow the consequences as they're just really chill about the situation, really. But everyone around them is obviously losing it. The family, the boss, they're not waking up to go to work that first day. And I really enjoyed, one, the writing. Two, he explained the whole feeling of alienation really, really well. And I had a feeling it had to do with his life. And again, some of you confirmed in the comment section that it was mostly about his relationship with his father. So this was great. I want to read more by him and probably learn more about his life. I feel like some classics, you wish you would be reading them in school just to have more of that background. But this was great. Would recommend 4. The last book that I read during that challenge was again by Stephen King, but this time I did like it. This is what I mean by, like, I have a weird relationship with him. I feel like it's very hit and miss, but Cujo was definitely horrifying. I think one of his strengths is the way he writes childhood fears. I felt the same way when I read It, even though a horrible ending, and that scene in the sewer, jail, straight to jail. But this was good. I knew it was about a dog, but I didn't know that much more. And it is about this dog who is a giant, giant Saint Bernard. He's like 200 pounds. And he puts his nose where he shouldn't, and he gets scratched by a bat and develops what's the name of that thing? I have the French word in my head, la rage. You know what I mean. He goes crazy, starts attacking people. I was really heartbroken in the scenes where you're seeing it from the point of view of the dog, where he's like, I'm not feeling good. That hurt me. That hurt me. He's also really good at writing kind of awful people, really, but like in a really realistic way. Like, it's just, anyway. And for once, I did like the ending. There's like, at one point, there's a question that is asked, and I was like, oh, I had to reread it a couple times just to really absorb it. So I will also round this up to a 4. It was much better than at Pupil for me. So yeah, horrifying. Did his job. The next reading vlog, I really tried to find a 5-star mystery thriller horror. I'm doing like 1 vlog a month trying to find some new favorites. And for this month, I was focusing on really popular books, and it was hit and miss. So let's just say that. The first one I did pick up was Gone Girl, because this is the only book I hadn't read by the author, and I was looking forward to it. I'd seen the movie. Actually, I've read the book first, and I put it down at, like, I don't know, 40, 50 pages because I could not stand Nick. I need to show you something. This is all I can see in the corner of my eye. Claudia losing it once again. You cannot enter this room. So yeah, I couldn't stand Nick, and then I watched the movie. I was like, oh, okay, things make a lot more sense now. And I finally now, like almost 10 years later, finished the book. And let me tell you, the casting, Ben Affleck, on point, on point. The main character is definitely shown as perpetually seeing himself as a victim in like the most enraging way. And I do want to clarify something, because I've been mentioning how this is like female rage, and I've been saying like good for you, good for her kind of story. I said that Amy is relatable, and some people thought I meant relatable in what she does, and I meant relatable in her anger towards her husband. And I think a lot of people felt that whenever they read this, because it does happen. You have these men who are just perpetually doing these awful things to their wives, and then they still perceive themselves as victims. So I thought this was the portion that a lot of people could relate to. But yeah, I didn't mean what she actually does with that rage. Come on, she's insane. That's kind of the point of the story. But I feel like the ending makes it more clear in the book that they deserve each other. They 100% do. And I feel like the movie kind of didn't give that. It wasn't as clear in the movie. I don't feel like if you've only seen the movie, you would really get that as much. Anyway, this was amazing. I have put like a million post-it. I loved it. And I feel like everyone has heard of the monologue about the cool girl. And I think there are more sections like this that are definitely really quotable, and I wish the author would come out with more books because all of them contain really morally gray, very gray female characters. And I feel like whenever this came out, a lot of authors tried to do the same thing and failed at it. They failed because it was just not good, not good, and only she can do it justice. So Gillian Flynn, please come back, save us from all these awful books. But 5-star, obviously. And then I attempted more books that I already own these books, and I didn't buy them hoping I was going to hate them. But as soon as I showed that I owned them, a lot of you told me that they were awful, and you were right, unfortunately. So I did attempt, never lie. I had bought this at the same time as The Housemaid, and I kind of hated it. So I was expecting the worst, but I did want to give it a shot because it's so popular. And I could not finish it. I couldn't finish it. I put it down, I don't know, like 70 pages into it. I have a post-it at page 66, so like probably not that far after. The characters are awfully written. I believe this was originally self-published and then picked up by a publisher. Honestly, I don't understand why she's so popular. And like I kind of meanly, but I do mean it, say that sometimes you wonder who these people know. Because, like, why this book? You cannot convince me that there weren't other better books that came out. I know this became popular because it was part of the Kindle Unlimited and then, picked up by a publisher because money. But this is awful. The writing's awful. The characters are awful. And I do think they're meant to be kind of awful, but not in that way. Not in that way. So you have main character, well, two timelines. In the past, you have this woman, she's a psychiatrist and she's awful. And I believe she gets murdered. And then in the present, you have this couple who, again, awful. We get also descriptions, weird descriptions of all their outfits, which some of you confirm that feels really like fan fiction. And like, yes, it's not. Anyway, they are going to this remote estate who used to be owned by the psychiatrist who was murdered. And then things are weird. And then, I put it down really quickly because it was so bad. And like, I'm not that picky with writing, I promise. But like this one and this one, straight up awful. So The Perfect Marriage, in this case, you have this man who feels very emasculated by his wife because she's a successful lawyer and he's a failed writer. So of course he cheats on her, as they do. And he leaves his mistress one night to go back home. She is murdered. And of course, police thinks it's them. I'm not sure how related the police was to the girl because the ex-boyfriend, husband of that girl was sending like mean, threatening messages. So like the way the police was acting was kind of giving me those vibes. But mostly, the female character was supposed to be boss girl, lawyer, is an idiot. And like it's really hard to believe in that story whenever the first time she talks to the police because her husband was arrested, she just spills all the beans right away. And like you're supposed to be a big shot lawyer and you're an idiot. No. So I put it down, not just because of that, but because once again, the writing was absolutely awful. And I put it down page 55, 56. So like really early on, I couldn't do it. And I'm really trying to learn to put down books when I'm not enjoying them. So clearly was not enjoying either of these. However, a lot of you were sad that I didn't get to the ending, because apparently it's even worse. Do not worry, because I am planning on filming a video where I spoil myself the endings of books that I couldn't finish. So like that's going to be probably my next video. So don't worry, it's going to happen. I am looking forward to it. To be honest, when I give up on a book, I kind of forget about it. But if they're as bad as you guys say, I'll find out. I'm like wondering how bad it can get, but at the same time, I believe you. So like I was mentioning earlier, when I could not get over how bad these books were, but I didn't want to read something else because I was really trying to, do that challenge, I went back to reading some nonfiction. Yay me. The first one that I finished was Are Prisons Obsolete? Which is like a different spectrum of everything. This is obviously a much more serious topic, but I've been really curious about the abolitionist movement, and Angela Davis was definitely part of this. And I found this really interesting. It's short, once again, it's about 115 pages. There's a little bit of a section that's about like more historical, which is a little bit slower to go through, like history of prisons in the US. It's not just US centric, but of course, big part of it. And the author mentions how prisons were created as a better solution to what we used to do to people as punishment, which was basically torturing them. But it doesn't mean that nowadays it is the best option. Like, is punishment actually the best solution to these problems? They pretend that it is about rehabilitation, but really, again, in the US, prisons is definitely like for profit. And like, how is that helping anyone whenever, well, it's helping companies make money. And like, why would you not want to keep people inside the prisons longer, want more people in prisons so they can make more money? So that was a very interesting discussion. I'm not 100% convinced about certain crimes not deserving punishment. I'm just going to say some people maybe, in society. But this was a very interesting discussion, and I did agree with her on a lot of points. So I would give this a 4-star, would recommend, and I would look more into it. Actually, if you want more into it, I did read The New Jim Crow. This is about the disenfranchisement of Black men in the US and how slavery movement through the Jim Crow laws became what the prison, war on crime, imprisoning everyone situation all in one. So it was really interesting. Also would highly recommend this one, but this one is a good introduction into the topic, would recommend it. And then I finished one that I was in the middle of for way too long, and it is Octavia E. Butler, The Last Interview. This is a collection of interviews about her, and like this is a series, like there's a bunch of different authors and like famous people. You can see in the back some of them. And I love Octavia E. Butler. I have read most of her books, will read all of her books, and I had read a few interviews about her, but I've been really enjoying getting to know her. I just enjoy what she has to say. I will say, not every interview was that great. To be fair, like it's in order, like date-wise, timeline-wise, and in the beginning especially, some people clearly don't know who she is, which like fair enough, but towards the end, some of them were still more rough than they should have been. With that said, I still really enjoyed it. You get to know her a little bit more and about more of her process, her thought process through writing her books, which are absolutely insane. If you enjoy sci-fi, you've definitely heard of her. She's definitely worth reading, and I will be doing a video all about her books whenever I'm done. I have 2 more to read. But one thing that I did learn that broke my heart is the fact that her Earthseed series is a duology, but it was meant to be a 6-book series. You can absolutely read it as a duology. She doesn't end her books in a like cliffhanger or anything like that, so don't worry. You can definitely, it's self-contained. Every book is self-contained, so you can stop at any time. And the second book actually in this series is probably my favorite book by her, but I don't think I ever want to read it again because, oh my gosh, I cannot do that. But 6 books? We were robbed of 4 books. 4 books. To be fair, she was in a like writer's block with that storyline because it is kind of dark, but this storyline is actually focused on no magical elements, nothing crazy. It's just what could be. And unfortunately, it is becoming this. So you have like climate change in there. You have this movement of right-wing politician, very religious, saying, making America great again. You have company towns, like you have this big old mess, and the main character is trying to find a common goal for humanity to unite. She's basically creating her own religion. And it was really good. It was really good. But yeah, she didn't know how to continue the story, even though she has some overall ideas, which again, there are a few mentioned in there, but I'm so sad. I'm so sad. But yes, I love this. Can't recommend this enough. That other series, not this. This was good. I think this might be like a 3 because some of the interviews were really. This is where I go on a very angry rant. So bear with me. I did finish the audiobook, The Age of Magical Overthinking, and I do want to add some context here. This is my 3rd book by the author. So the second one that I did read by her was this one that I can't say out loud because YouTube is a poo-poo head. But this is about how sexist the English language is. And I was really curious because my first language is French. French is extremely gendered. I've done a lot of study in French, and we've discussed that a lot. So I was really curious to see how the English language compared, and the book is a little bit pop culture, but like it doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. I feel like it makes it very beginner friendly, an introduction into the topic, and like one portion that is burned into my brain is the fact that everything is so gendered that you don't always realize it. For example, penetration. That's sexist. Why did we not say instead envelopment? So she mentions that in the book and makes you think, huh, like I would have not thought about this, and it's true. Why not? The first one that I read by her was Cultish, which I did overall enjoy. It's not really about cults, like modern versions of cults, like Yoga Retreat, CrossFit, or like fandoms like Taylor Swift. So like that was still fine. I did find the title was a little bit inaccurate because it mentions the language of phantasm, and like, where was that? Where was that? But because I enjoyed the book overall, I continued reading by her. That's why I read the second one. So now we go back to the 3rd book that I read by her, The Age of Magical Overthinking, where this is the equivalent of a clickbait YouTube video. The title, nothing to do with the book. This is a memoir. And like, no offense, but who are you? I don't read a ton of memoir. If I do, it's going to be about someone that I really like or care about, or most likely about someone that went through something I'm interested in. And like, again, who are you? And I've read 3 of her books, so like I should know now. To give you an overall idea, first chapter about her mom, very much of a stretch, but I let that one go. Second chapter about her ex-boyfriend. What was that? The third one about her current boyfriend? Again, what was the point? And then she gets onto the topic of women sharing their cancer story through YouTube, which like, okay, I feel like you can't talk about that without sounding mean, but like what does it have to do with the topic? The only section that was mildly related was the section about manifestation, which was way too short, and I feel like more of the book should have been about that. So this is essentially a collection of short story of herself that you will not care about. Frankly, this felt like a money grab. It felt like, okay, I published 2 other books. My publisher wants another one. Let me just shove these stories together and try it. And we're going to put a very good title and nice cover, and it's going to be read. But this is going to be the last book that I read by you, because what was that? I'm genuinely angry because, again, nothing to do with the title. I don't say that often, but don't read this. Absolutely skip it. So the other books by her, sure. This one, no. That was mean. I loved it. Then I went into my last challenge of the month where I was attempting to finish series, which has been a struggle. It was a fun vlog. I did my skincare routine. We chit-chatted. A lot of you enjoyed it. I'm glad because I will be doing more of that stuff. But I finished 2 books that were part of series. The first one is a mystery, which there aren't that many that I read that are series, but this is Dark Corners. I did enjoy The Night Swim, which I would recommend. If you can or enjoy them, I would recommend them as audiobooks because part of the story is told in like a podcast format, which makes it really fun to listen to. And if I can find one of the chapters that shows it, there you go. You do still have podcasts in the second book, but I read the physical book because that's the copy I found. But main character does have that podcast. She does like crime podcast that everyone seems to be super obsessed with. And then at the same time, she goes in person to review a crime in a small town that is going on, like a court case. So that was the first book. And because she was very successful in that first book, the second book happens, and she is now very well known as a podcaster, and she gets sucked into this investigation about the murder of an influencer, which like I'm always all about that, but whatever. So she kind of sneaks into this convention trying to investigate in the middle of a bunch of influencers, a lot of like lifestyle and fitness ones. And then at the same time, she does have the podcast that seems to be a different storyline, but eventually things converge like book 1. And I did overall really enjoyed it. I will round it up to a 4, but I'm not a fan of what authors have to say about influencers in general. I don't necessarily disagree with everything, but I feel like they always make them sound the most shallow people ever, which again, fair enough. But the other book that I read that was part of a series is Defect. The first book was Finna, and I really enjoyed Finna because the first book, you're starting with the main character who they just ended a relationship with their partner. They both work at essentially IKEA. Whenever they go to work, they are forced to go and save a customer that was sucked in like a wormhole, like a different parallel universe. And there's a lot of adventure going on there. But the second book, it seems to be like about the same time. It's a different employee, and he is very lonely and depressed. He basically lives in the parking lot of the store too. And I can't tell you too much because, again, it is a second book, but I feel like this one was more like horror adventure than like straight up fantasy adventure like the other one. So I would say that it is still worth picking up if you enjoyed book 1, but I wasn't as emotionally invested in it as much as I wanted to, but I can see why some would care about it more than me. Both of them were very short, like under 200 pages. So this was a quick read. I would recommend it if that sounds appealing, but 3-star for me. There are a couple more that I did not finish. I really struggled with audiobooks. It doesn't sound like it because I did finish a couple, but for a while I kept putting down every single one of the ones I was trying. For example, When Among Crows, which is like 5 hours and I couldn't finish it. So like, no offense, it could just be me, but like fantasy, I don't even much about the storyline because I didn't make it very far for some reason. I just could not focus. Same thing with In the Dream House, which like I really wanted to read. This is like memoir nonfiction. Main character is queer and she was in an abusive relationship, I think. I again could not focus. Like, you know, sometimes you trying to listen and you realize you haven't listened for an hour. Does not happen to me very often with audiobook, but these two, it could just, yeah, it just kept happening to me. It was the same thing last month. So I'm hoping that I'm done with this, but yeah, these two, I could not finish them. Also done with vulture capitalism, which is really not my usual cup of tea. I feel like these topics tend to be quite heavy, but I realized that I never listened or tried one written by a woman, and I did feel like it made a difference. I can't say this is my favorite topic. I felt like it went into a lot more depth than what I'm personally interested in, but it made it a little easier to go through. I would recommend at least trying the intro. I thought it was appealing enough for me to give it a shot, but it was a long and heavy one for me. So not bad. I don't think I'm going to rate this because I just don't feel comfortable doing so. Now, let's talk about the ones I'm currently in the middle of because it's like 4. Yeah, just bear with me. Audiobook, since we're here, I got my hand on this one. I'm so excited. We Solve Murders. I'm 10% into it. So like, let's not go crazy, but this author tends to write cozy murder mystery. A lot of people will have read the Thursday Murder Club, which is like a bunch of old people solving murder mystery. And this one is a little different. It's still murder mystery, small town kind of vibes. So far, you have these 2 people that are working together, but completely different section. One of them is, again, small town, English countryside, and he's trying to catch a dog so far. So like... But then the other one seems to be protecting like rich and famous kind of people. And there seems to be some kind of intrigue starting up. So I'm looking forward to it. It just came out, but a lot of people have been giving it very high ratings. So hopeful. I'm also currently reading an arc, A Pirate's Life for Tea. The book is coming out October 1st. So like I'm a little last minute, but I just got it. This is the second book after Can't Spell Tea Without Treason, where you had these 2 women who run away to open up a coffee/tea shop because they don't want to have all these responsibility, like being the guard of this mean queen or the magician protecting the realm. So they run away, and then book 2, you're following all of that. And I'm curious, I know that there's going to be a pirate, but I'm still early on. I'm just like 4 or 5 chapters into it. So like 10% once again. So far so good. I'm looking forward to it. It's like cozy fantasy, which I'm starting to be in the mood for more than like all the mystery thriller horror that I've been reading. So for physical books, I started The Appeal, which is going to be part of my next vlog. I'm only 112 pages into it, and I was not prepared for this because I thought this was a lock room murder mystery, and like lock room is like a bit of a stretch, but you have this troupe of actors part of this theater, and the granddaughter of the owners, I don't know if they're the owners, but these people, is diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. So they're trying to raise the money to save her, get her treatment. And I know eventually someone is going to be dead. It seems that you're starting with people being told to just go through all this data. And I'm guessing they're police officers because it's not clear. The reason I'm so unclear about the premise is because it's told in a bunch of like text messages and emails. I was not ready for this, but I am enjoying it. It's really funny because you get the personality of the characters through those. And like, for example, there's one character, Isabel. She's very needy. And some characters, you don't see their point of view. So you don't know if Sam and Kel find her annoying or if they're into her too. Or you can tell that some characters are just awful people in the way they're like writing their emails. Like, oh, your granddaughter has cancer. Well, I have this one person that survived magically through this, It's very realistic. But yeah, the format is not something I was expecting. I hadn't heard anyone mention this. So it took me a second to get into it. And I'm curious if I'm gonna get tired of that format because it's 400 pages, but we'll see how things end up developing and who murdered who. I don't know yet. So this is just not what I expected, but not in a bad way. Interesting format. As far as nonfiction, I did start The Mountain Is You, which is transforming self-sabotage into self-mastery. Disclaimer, I'm kind of a hater with self-help. Let's just say that. Maybe I should say I'm a skeptic, but I feel like there are two kinds. Some of the ones that are so not helpful, they just feel very money grabby. And then the ones that are actually helpful. And it's still early to really say with this one. I'm only 91 pages into it, but so far I'm not leaning towards the good kind. I do want to self-master, but you can tell already with my tone that So no offense, but probably will not like this, but I will give it a fair shot because it's still early. I feel like right now we've mostly talked about what the author sees as self-sabotage and, a few situations and examples so far. Has it been helpful? No. But I feel like I don't necessarily think I have self-sabotage. I feel like I was dealing with health issues and, executive dysfunction. I think that's more me. But maybe that's self-sabotage, I don't know. This has to be the longest wrap-up ever. I hope you enjoyed this. Thumbs up, subscribe. I'll put more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out. I did do a fall book tag, which was a lot of fun. I also talked about a lot of lip products I've enjoyed, which have been getting a lot of questions lately. And I've been wearing basically like 3 different ones the whole time. Also did a video about popular books that I think are worth the hype, which kind of balances out all the negative videos. I feel like the books I've enjoyed, I enjoyed, and then the books I did not enjoy, I hated. So like it's just so extreme. But that's it. I will see you in my next one. Bye.